Hey guys, before we start, I want to share something important. At the end of this video, I have a big announcement for you guys, so stay tuned. I'm going to give you an exciting hint that our new content is going to be awesome. Today, we're going to try something new. I'm going to tell you 3 stories about real people who have gone through unbelievable and completely crazy events. Think of situations that are stranger than fiction that not only changed their lives, but also affected millions of others. I know today's stories are a little different than the usual content on this channel, and I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments. If you like the idea, we'll continue to make more episodes. But before we get into these fascinating stories, if you're a fan of the weird, dark, and mysterious told through story format, then you've come to the right place. This is all we do, and we post new videos every week. So if that interests you, go sneaky and like and replace all the expensive steel knives in someone's kitchen with plastic ones. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our content. Okay, let's get started. Fred sat there for a few seconds, staring at the chips in front of him, now piled up in a large pile. This unexpected win had not only saved the company, but also given him a new lease of life. The numbers danced in his head. $27,000. Enough to pay off his overdue gas bills and buy him some precious time. But more than that, it was a chance to start over, to bring the company back from the brink of collapse. The cheers around him pulled Fred back to the present. Some people came up to shake his hand. Others just stood at a distance, their eyes filled with admiration and envy. Fred tried to smile, but he couldn't shake the feeling of excitement. He had just bet everything on a single hand. All the money he had, even his pride and his last hope. If he lost, he knew he would have to go home empty-handed, to his employees, to his family, and to himself. But now, everything had changed. He gathered his chips and walked to the cashier. As he waited, his mind was spinning with plans. He would pay off the debts immediately, then call an emergency meeting with the shareholders. Fred knew he needed to use this victory to convince them that the company still had a chance, that they needed to invest more, or at least not give up completely. The cashier counted the money carefully before handing him the wad of cash. "Congratulations," she said with a professional smile. Fred thanked her and quickly stuffed the money into his old leather briefcase. He had to leave immediately. Despite the victory, the casino was not a place he wanted to stay for long. Out the door of the casino, Fred felt the cold night air. The neon lights behind him were a reminder that life was a game of chance. He paused, took a deep breath, and walked to the old car parked in the lot. Fred opened the door, threw his briefcase into the passenger seat, and sat down. He leaned his head against the steering wheel, feeling the tension slowly leave his body. "Okay," he said to himself. "This is just the beginning." Fred drove home. As he drove, he couldn't help but remember how he got into this situation. His company, once his greatest pride, was now struggling with unimaginable hardship. The recession, bad decisions, and fierce competition from rivals had caused sales to plummet. Bills were piling up, investors were backing away, and the bank was calling to demand payment. Fred hadn't slept a full night in recent weeks. He lived in fear that tomorrow the company would have to close, that dozens of employees would lose their jobs, and that the dream he had spent his life building would be shattered. The car pulled up in front of Fred's small house. The lights were still on. His wife, Emma, was waiting. She had been his biggest supporter, the only one who believed in him even when everything seemed to be falling apart. Fred walked into the house, and Emma immediately came over. "How's it going?" she asked, her voice a mixture of worry and hope. Fred smiled, a tired smile, but one filled with relief. He opened the briefcase, revealing the wad of cash inside. Emma gasped, unable to believe her eyes. "Honey, we have another chance," he said, his voice shaking. "I won, and now we can save the company." Emma hugged him, tears streaming down her face. They were tears of joy, but also of relief from the pressure that had been weighing them down for months. They stood there, in a meaningful moment of silence, feeling the relief and hope that filled the small room. Fred knew that the journey was still long and challenging, but tonight he allowed himself to believe that everything would be okay. With his winnings, he had bought something priceless: time. And with time, he believed that he could change the fortunes of the company and of his own life. After that fateful night, Fred did not allow himself to waste a single second. He woke up early in the morning, ready to start a new chapter for the company. Fred returned to the office, where his associates and employees were immersed in anxiety and uncertainty. With the money he had just won, Fred not only paid off the urgent debts, but also lifted the spirits of the entire team. At the company-wide meeting that day, Fred stood before everyone, his eyes shining with determination. "We have come to the brink," he began, his voice resolute. "But I believe we still have a chance, and I will do everything I can to make this chance a reality." Fred quickly implemented an action plan: immediately pay the fuel bills to ensure uninterrupted transportation, improve the quality of service, and especially restart the campaign to find major investors. He worked tirelessly, spending hours meeting, pitching, and convincing each potential investor. Fred didn't just talk about numbers and profits, but also told the story of the company's determination and survival. Those efforts eventually paid off. A major investor, a prestigious financial group, was convinced by Fred's vision and perseverance. They agreed to invest $1 million in the company, an amount that was enough to completely restructure operations, upgrade technology, and expand scale. This investment was not only a lifeline, but also a stepping stone for the company to go further. With the new capital, Fred began to make major changes. He focused on optimizing operational processes, building a stronger team, and expanding the shipping network to new areas. He also invested heavily in technology, implementing a modern inventory tracking and warehouse management system, something that competitors had not yet paid attention to. All of this helped the company improve its speed and accuracy in service, creating a difference in the market. Fred's company not only recovered, but also grew rapidly. Within a few years, it became a prominent name in the shipping industry. Fred renamed the company FedEx, a name that connoted speed and reliability. FedEx quickly expanded its operations globally, serving millions of customers and becoming a symbol of innovation in the shipping industry. Fred never forgot that fateful night at the casino, when he bet it all and won. But more than that, he never forgot the long days of relentless work that followed. Along with the support and faith of his team and family, from a small company facing bankruptcy, FedEx took off to become one of the largest shipping companies in the world, a testament to the power of determination, leadership, and the spirit of never giving up. Fred Smith has proven that faith, perseverance, and the ability to turn challenges into opportunities are the core elements of success. However, not everyone can learn and apply those lessons fully. While Fred continues his journey to conquer his dream, a different, contrasting story is happening with Norm. Norm was a talented employee, once highly regarded for his skills and leadership abilities, but recent failures at work and conflicts with his boss have left him in a state of instability. Instead of facing the problem and finding a solution, Norm chooses to run away. Negative thoughts gradually erode his will, and every day he turns to alcohol as a temporary comfort. That night, in a familiar bar, Norm sits alone in a hidden corner in front of a row of empty wine glasses. Memories of his boss's harsh reprimands flood back, making him even more frustrated. I should have done better. I should have stood up for my ideas instead of keeping quiet, Norm muttered under his breath. But instead of turning his regret into action, he poured himself another drink, as if to drown out his feelings. As the night wore on, Norm was completely drunk. The regulars in the bar had left one by one, leaving him alone to face the emptiness. Fred Smith risked his life. What about me? How could I have been so weak? He smiled bitterly, but inside he was a rising anger that he couldn't control. The anger at his boss, the man he thought was the cause of it all, was still burning in his mind, like a wound that hadn't healed. Finally, Norm decided to leave the bar, but instead of going home, he drove straight to his office where the dim light still shone through the windows. He stood in front of the door, a mixture of anger, disappointment, and regret. Part of him wanted to break everything, but the other part reminded him that he still had a chance to change. Norm was no Fred Smith, but he also knew that if he continued to wallow in pain and disappointment, he would lose everything. And no matter how difficult the first step was, he knew he had to do something, not to prove himself to his boss, but to find himself again. In his drunken stupor, Norm's emotions were like a volcano waiting to erupt. He left the crowd, his legs wobbly but determined, pushing past his old colleagues who were laughing and talking. The loud music and laughter of the party were like a chaotic backdrop in his mind, pushing all the feelings of anger and helplessness to a climax. Norm climbed to the second floor of the house, his hands clutching the worn wooden railing. He stood on the balcony, the pale yellow light from the ceiling shining on his face, red from alcohol and anger. From above, Norm looked down on the entire party, where faces were still jubilant, unaware of the storm that was brewing. Then he screamed, a hoarse scream cutting through all the sounds below, causing the music to suddenly stop. Curious eyes looked up, looking at Norm, now like the main character in an unwilling tragedy. "Everyone, listen to me," he stammered, his voice shaking but full of emotion. His words were unclear, stumbling over each word as he tried to find his way through the chaos of his emotions. Norm began a speech that was clumsy, full of complaints about the injustices he had suffered. I got fired, after all these years of service. And now you're here partying, laughing at me? Each sentence was like a knife stabbing into the silence of the crowd below. He spoke of his disappointment with himself, with those who had called him friends, and of his frustration with the world. His words were faltering, but there was no mistaking them as the words of a deeply wounded man. Though his words were disjointed, the intensity of Norm's eyes, the trembling of his raised arms, and the echoing of his voice held everyone's attention. No one moved. The crowd below seemed frozen in curiosity, shock, and a little sympathy. The scene was like a train wreck, chaotic, incomprehensible, but impossible to look away from. Norm finally ran out of steam. He stood still for a long moment, his gaze lost, then slowly lowered his arms. His last words, hoarse and weak, were almost swallowed by the air. No one really cares. He staggered off the balcony, his slouched figure disappearing through the second-floor doors. The crowd below slowly returned to their hesitant conversations, and the rhythm of the party slowly recovered. But a heavy feeling hung in the air, a feeling that no one at that dinner party would soon forget. As Norm stood alone, Still drunk and angry, he felt a gentle hand tap his shoulder. He turned around, and standing before him was a well-dressed man with a concerned look in his eyes. The man asked, "Hey, have you ever thought about acting in a play?" Norm was confused, not understanding what was going on. The man explained that he was a Hollywood producer and was looking for actors for a play in Los Angeles. He said that Norm's expressions and the way he conveyed his emotions just now had a natural charm that not everyone had. At first, Norm was unsure. He had never thought of becoming an actor. But when he thought about how he had just lost his job and was currently unemployed, he accepted. From drunk to movie star. Norm's first play went well. Despite his lack of experience, he excelled with his authenticity and natural instincts. The audience loved him, and this attracted the attention of many other producers and directors. Just then, Tabby heard the front door of the trailer open. Stephen walked in, looking tired after a long day. Tabby approached, holding a piece of paper, and held it up in front of him. "What is this? Why won't you show it to me?" she asked, her voice a mixture of reproach and curiosity. Stephen looked confused, even embarrassed. He looked at the piece of paper, sighed, and shook his head. "It's just nonsense, Tabby. I started writing it, but quickly realized I wasn't good enough to finish it. Besides, the idea was so strange, no one would want to publish it." Tabby looked at her husband intently. "No, you're wrong. I just read it and it's good, really good. Why did you throw it away?" Stephen smiled bitterly. "Tabby, I can't keep chasing these pipe dreams. We need money. The family needs money. I think it's time to give up writing and focus on more practical things." Tabby put her hand on her husband's shoulder, her eyes shining with determination. "No, I don't agree. This can change everything. If you don't know enough about the subject, I'll help you. We'll work together, we'll turn it into a novel." At Tabby's firm encouragement, Stephen agreed to return to the manuscript he had discarded. He began working, and Tabby supported him every step of the way. She encouraged him, helped him plot, and edit every detail. They worked tirelessly for months, and by the spring of 1974, the manuscript was finished. They sent it to publishers, hopeful but not daring to expect too much. A few weeks later, one of the major publishers responded. Not only did they agree to publish, but they offered a whopping $400,000 advance, which is equivalent to $2.5 million in today's dollars. Stephen and Tabby couldn't believe their luck. They moved out of their cramped trailer into a beautiful house and started a new life. That novel was Carrie, Stephen King's debut, and it was the book that launched him to become one of the most famous writers in the world. It all started when Tabby picked up a crumpled piece of paper from the trash, determined not to let her husband's dream go to waste. It was her determination and love that changed their lives forever. Siberia, August 1993. The river lifts a thin layer of cold snow from the Kamardian Mountains, slanting through the gray sky like an ancient painting. Here, behind a tiny kayak, the sound of water ripping across the river's surface is a lullaby to every eye. There is something wild and majestic about the rugged landscape, an escape from the noise of the city. There is no more squealing or dust, only the whistling of the wind blowing past your ears. Its coldness is a reminder that, here, it all has nothing to do with anyone or anything but yourself and the endless white snowfield. You feel something very right, a rare peace. Yet the atmosphere is suddenly very different. Suddenly, your eyes catch something strange. Far away, standing on the other bank of the river, there is a figure. In the background of the gray-green trees, that person stands out like fire. It's a girl. She's waving her hand as if to remind someone to stop. Her arm is pecked, giving way in a miserable scream. Her voice echoes through the mountain corner, directly facing the terrifying snow walls. But everything is blurred and blurred. From that distance, you almost don't recognize it, but the first glance is like blood, cheer. You open your body. However, there is no hesitation. You take off your windbreaker, directly dive into the cold water that is like 1,000 knives cutting. That cold is hot and heavy like a burning shield, but each step still has all the memories. After a moment, the wide open face from the special disarming thing, swallowing the story that only the things are, just gradually bent over the rice over time. But the mold has design. Eat. Thank you for following. If you are looking for more interesting content, make sure to check out our other episodes and leave your feedback in the comments. We always want to hear from you to improve the show even more. Remember that we have many more videos for you to explore. If you need a suggestion from us, then check out this video. It will definitely be worth your time. See you next Wednesday with a brand new episode. Don't forget to subscribe and stay updated with the latest content. Have a great day!